Hey there. Tonight we're stepping into a world where beauty was more than skin deep. It was skin thin, spirit tight, and ritual bound. This isn't a story about glittering gowns or glamorous powders. No, this is the story behind the mirror in a room that smelled more like vinegar and damp wool than roses. You're about to slip into the delicate, disciplined life of a noblewoman, whose every pore was policed, whose every expression was part of a carefully performed script. If stories like this help you relax where history arrives in hushed tones and soft candlelight without pressure or judgment, you're gently invited to subscribe or follow along. Only if it feels right for you, of course. I'd love to know what time it is where you are, and maybe what part of the world you're listening from tonight. Leave a comment if you'd like, just to remind the past that you're here quietly watching. Now take a breath, one deep enough to feel the silence between centuries. You wake not to an alarm clock, but to the soft rattle of wooden shutters and the steady drip of condensation on stone. Your chamber smells of lavender, sure, but there's also something metallic beneath it, faint but sharp like old brass or fresh ink. That scent is coming from a small clay bowl by your bedside. Inside, something moves. It wriggles, sluggish but alive, dark and damp and clinging to the inside of the bowl. The maid doesn't flinch as she lifts its steady hands practiced from repetition. She doesn't explain. She never does. You already know what today begins with. Leeches. This is not medicine, at least not in the way modern minds would define it. This is refinement. This is prestige. This is your first beauty treatment of the morning. A ritual carried out in silence, because to speak while the body is being cleansed would interrupt the flow of what they call the humors. And you must keep your humors in balance or risk more than a bad complexion. An imbalance might show in your skin, in your voice, in your virtue. In the medieval world, especially by the late 14th century, bloodletting was believed to do more than treat disease. It lightened the body, calmed the mind, and critically, for women of your rank, helped the skin achieve that fragile, luminous pallor considered the mark of nobility. Pale didn't just mean beautiful. Pale meant powerful, untouched by labor, by sunlight, by coarse air or coarse company. Of course, there's more than one way to let blood. Some noble women preferred the cut of a sharp silver blade performed by a local barber surgeon, who would quietly nick a vein in the foot or forearm. Others chose the more discreet, slower method, medicinal leeches applied to the cheeks behind the ears, or when extra fairness was needed along the neckline where gowns exposed just enough flesh to speak without words. You don't ask how many leeches are in the bowl today, but the maid knows what's expected. She places one delicately along your left cheek, then mirrors the position on the right. Their grip is gentle at first, almost ticklish, then firmer, anchored. You feel the faint pull, the suction, the slow release of tension, as warmth spreads beneath your skin. You close your eyes. You don't think about the fact that this is essentially voluntary bleeding. You think about what you'll look like in an hour, more translucent maybe, more refined, your veins just a little closer to the surface. You think about how the Dowager Duchess commented last week on how robust your coloring had become. Not a compliment. And so here you are, letting creatures do their work on your skin, because in this time and place, health isn't about strength. It's about appearance. And appearance is everything. Historians still debate how much of this was truly believed versus how much was simply endured. Was the use of leeches and blades a sincere medical practice or merely a fashionable gesture, a mark of class as much as a prescription? It's hard to say. The medieval mind didn't separate beauty from health the way we do today. To glow too much was to suggest vice. To look too alive was to look common. There's something deeply ironic about how often women in history have had to look close to dying in order to seem divine. You remember the Countess's daughter who took things too far. She insisted on daily bleedings not just for her face, but for her arms, her back. The household whispered she became light as a spirit, meaning thin, exhausted, barely able to sit upright at Mass. She passed out during a May Day festival once right in front of a bishop. They said it was an honor, a display of devotion. But her mother quietly banned her from any more morning rituals involving leeches. Not out of concern, of course, but embarrassment. You shift in your chair as the leeches begin to let go their work complete. Your maid, ever efficient, plucks them one by one and places them into a second jar. You know they'll be boiled later, along with the blood they've drawn. Some say it's the only way to truly end the impurity cycle. Others say it's just to prevent reuse, though rumor has it some households do keep their favorite ones on call. Your cheeks now feel oddly cool, as if the surface of your skin has thinned just slightly. The mirror on the wall, a disc of polished bronze no more reflective than a puddle, isn't much help. But your maid smiles faintly as she dabs your cheeks with rose water. That means you've achieved it, the faint pallor of morning elegance. You look at last like you belong indoors. A strange, quiet pride begins to rise in your chest. You didn't cry out. You didn't flinch. And already your day has begun better than most. Because what you've done bleeding gently in silence is proof that you can endure the rules without questioning them. You've given the world what it wants, a face that says nothing but means everything. You're not permitted to rest long, not that comfort is ever really part of the process. While the rose water from your post-leech cleansing still clings faintly to your cheeks, the maid is already preparing your next ordeal. She brings out a ceramic bowl with a cracked rim filled with what looks like grayish dust. Next to it, a folded cloth and a wooden comb worn smooth by use. You know what's coming, the daily dry cleaning of your hair. There is no steam, no splash, no warm basin of water. Medieval noble households, especially those situated in damp climates like northern France or England, did not consider regular wet washing a necessity, sometimes not even a virtue. Too much bathing was viewed with suspicion. Hot water, some believed, could weaken the body, soften the skin too much, or even damage one's fertility. A clean body was one thing, but a cleansed reputation was far more important. So instead of lather and rinse, your hair is freshened with a dry mixture, crushed iris root white clay, and a hint of dried lavender to mask the underlying earthiness. The mixture is sifted through a fine muslin cloth, and your maid gently parts your hair to apply it at the roots, massaging it in with steady fingertips. The powder absorbs oil, lifts dirt, and dulls the natural shine of hair, because even gloss in this world might be mistaken for indulgence. The scent is not unpleasant, earthy, herbal, but it's the ritual that matters more than the result. These powders, what we might call early dry shampoo, have been used by noble women for generations. They're passed down not as luxuries, but necessities. There's even a family recipe, supposedly once used by your great-grandmother, when she served at the court of a now-dead duchess. You close your eyes and let her work, trying not to flinch. As she detangles a few stubborn knots, wooden combs don't forgive impatience. And this part can take nearly half an hour, sometimes longer if the weather's been damp, and your hair has taken on that soft, stubborn frizz that no powder can quite tame. Historians still debate how frequently women in the Middle Ages actually cleaned their hair, and whether rituals like this were common practice or reserved for the ultra-wealthy. But household manuals, some surviving in their original Latin, describe hair care routines that sound far more elaborate than one might expect. One even recommends letting hair hang loose by the window once a week to catch the wind's spirit and release it again. It's unclear whether that was a hygiene tip or a poem disguised as instruction. Tidbits like that remind you how blurry the lines were between beauty and belief. When your hair is fully powdered, the maid begins brushing slow, firm strokes that bring some life back to the strands. Your scalp tingles a little. Whether from stimulation or from sheer relief, you can't quite tell. There's something oddly peaceful about it. This is one of the few parts of the ritual that doesn't actively hurt. You know that by afternoon, your hair will begin to feel weighed down. The powder will settle. A slight itch might creep in. But for now, you feel something close to clean. A cloth is wrapped around your head to hold the style, and then tied behind your ears. This isn't the final hairstyle, of course, only the pre-styling wrap. The real work comes later, after your skin is painted. But even that simple cloth is part of the performance. In this society, your body is constantly broadcasting messages, whether you intend it or not. A neat wrap says order. It says modesty. It says you haven't been running or sweating or, heaven forbid, laughing too hard. A respectable woman has time to tend to her appearance. A respectable woman, above all, is tidy. And so you sit wrapped and powdered still as the stone lions that guard the family chapel. The maid leaves to rinse her hands. You hear the splash of water in the outer chamber, the same basin that was purposefully not offered to you. It's not that you're forbidden from using water. It's just that you're not supposed to need it. Wetness implies activity, effort, sweat. A truly refined woman, they say, remains untouched by exertion. There's a story your aunt once told you about a distant ancestor, some long-forgotten lady of the court, who was so delicate she never needed a full bath. They say her skin stayed fragrant because her soul was pure. She wiped herself with cloths soaked in dew and rainwater blessed by a priest. Never once was her entire body submerged. You believed it as a child. Maybe a part of you still wants to. Now the maid returns with a shallow box lined with felt. Inside are small bundles of herbs, dried roots, and something that glints in the morning light, a comb carved from mother of pearl. It's used only on feast days or when someone important might visit. Today is neither. But the household has its own expectations, and you, as the eldest daughter, must always be ready to represent the family, even if it's just at lunch, even if it's just in passing, even if no one but the steward and your younger brother will see you. Because readiness isn't about who's looking, it's about who might be. As she unwraps your hair, some powder shakes free and floats in the air. It settles on the edge of the windowsill where it will mingle with the dust already there. You wonder briefly what someone centuries from now might think if they examined this place, these small rituals, these odd traces of beauty left behind. Would they understand what you were doing? Would they know why your hair is now fluffed, lifted slightly from the scalp with a small pin to give it volume? It's not styled yet, that will come later. But this in-between stage is just enough to make you feel presentable. You rise slowly back, still straight from habit more than effort, and cross the room to sit by the fire while your maid prepares the next steps. You glance into the mirror again, though it barely shows you. A flicker of shape, a suggestion of cheekbones. Nothing sharp, nothing honest. Just the outline of someone meant to be looked at and not recognized. There's a small ache at the back of your scalp from where the comb tugged a little too hard. You ignore it. Beauty here is not about comfort. It never has been. Downstairs, the scullery maids are likely wiping their foreheads with sleeves. The boys tending the stables are already sweating through their tunics. They don't get powders. They don't get rose water. And yet they're not the ones being judged by the tilt of their eyebrows or the scent of their sleeves. You shift slightly, catching a faint breeze through the window, and wonder if they envy you. Or if perhaps they pity you more than you pity them. The fire crackles gently beside you. Your hair smells of flowers and earth, but beneath it all you still feel the slight weight of dust. It's not unpleasant, just constant, just always there, much like the expectations. And then the maid returns with the next bowl. This one has a different scent, sharper, more metallic, and your skin tenses at the familiarity. Face painting comes next, but for now you allow yourself a small breath. The kind that doesn't disturb your posture or your neckline. the kind that isn't quite relief, but something near it. You've survived 2 rituals already this morning. You've given your blood. You've purified your hair. And the day has barely begun. The scent hits you before the bowl is even close. Sharp and sour like vinegar left too long in the sun, with something deeper beneath it, something metallic and cold. You recognize it instantly. Ceruse, the infamous white paste that gives noblewomen their signature porcelain glow and eventually their signature brittle skin. You've worn it before. You'll wear it again today, and each time you wonder just how much of you it's slowly erasing. The maid sets the bowl on the dressing table without a word. There's no need for instructions. This part of the ritual is as routine as prayer. A small sponge fashioned from cloth, wrapped around horsehair, dips into the mixture and comes out heavy, glistening with pale sludge. You close your eyes as the first dab lands on your forehead, cool and wet. It spreads across your skin in deliberate strokes, over your temples, down your cheeks, around your nose, and finally across your chin. You must sit still. The paste needs to dry evenly. Any shift in your muscles, any wrinkle from expression might create cracks. And cracks are unacceptable. Your face must be a surface, a message. Smooth, serene, untouched. You don't smile. You don't blink too hard. You breathe shallowly through your nose and imagine your features becoming marble. This isn't just makeup. This is your armor. Historians have traced the use of white lead cosmetics back to ancient Rome, but in medieval Europe, particularly during the 14th and 15th centuries, ceruse became something of a status symbol. It was difficult to make, expensive to refine, and delicate to apply. Only women of means could afford the risk of it, let alone the time to sit motionless while it dried. And it did carry risks, serious ones. Lead poisoning could cause everything from muscle tremors to miscarriages. Long-term use thinned the skin, caused dark spots, and made veins more visible. Ironically, some of these side effects became part of the aesthetic. The more fragile you looked, the more elevated you seemed. You remember one lady of court still young, barely older than you, whose face turned gray beneath the lead. It started at the jawline, then crept toward her cheeks. People whispered about her at feasts, complimented her delicate color, while averting their eyes. When she stopped appearing in public, they simply moved on. No one asked what happened. They already knew. Still, the ideal remained. A perfect woman's face had to be pale, unblemished, and still. Freckles were for peasants. Rosy cheeks were acceptable, but only if applied, not earned. Natural redness from warmth or exercise. Vulgar, unseemly, uncontrolled. Even joy had to be measured. The maid continues layering the paste, smoothing it with the flat side of her fingers, pressing gently into the hollow below your eyes. The smell is stronger now. Vinegar and metal. You feel the skin around your nostrils tightening. Tidbits survive from beauty manuals and household recipes. Some warning against using ceruse, too often others suggesting it be mixed with rose water to minimize damage. A few even recommend applying a thin layer of egg white underneath as a barrier. But no such protection is offered today. Your skin must carry the full weight of your beauty. Historians still argue over how much women knew about the dangers. Some believe they were fully aware and simply accepted the cost. Others suggest they were misled, told that any ill effects were the result of spiritual impurity or improper preparation. Either way, the outcome was the same. Devotion to appearance demanded sacrifice. As the final layer dries, the maid steps back to examine her work. She doesn't speak, but you sense her approval. She dips a linen cloth into lavender water and pats the sides of your neck, another small flourish. You catch your reflection in the polished bronze mirror. It's not detailed, but you see the outline. Your skin has gone from soft pink to ghost white. The bones of your face now seem sharper, more defined. Your eyes darker by contrast. Your mouth more mysterious. You look like someone who doesn't cry. someone who doesn't age, someone not quite alive. And that here is beautiful. There's a particular poem your tutor once recited it aloud, about a woman whose skin was so pale she was mistaken for a statue. The knight in the story falls in love with her without ever hearing her speak. When she finally does, he recoils. Her voice, he says, was too warm, too real. The poem ends with her silence restored, her beauty preserved. You hated that story. Now you live it. The maid retrieves a tiny cloth bundle from the dressing chest. Inside is a mixture of powdered chalk and ground pearl saved for special days. She taps a bit onto your cheeks and nose, then buffs it in with a circular motion. The shimmer is barely visible, but under candlelight, it will make you glow. Not brightly, not joyfully, just faintly enough to seem untouchable. You want to touch your face to feel how the layers have changed its texture. But that, of course, is forbidden. Skin like this isn't for touching. It's for observing, admiring from a respectful distance. There are rules for everything, even how a woman should glow. Your lips are left bare for now. Too much color too early might undo the balance. And besides, the next step will require complete stillness once again. You sit by the window while your maid cleans her tools. Outside, the morning light filters through warped glass, casting uneven patterns on the stone floor. You wonder if anyone passing by might glimpse your silhouette and think you're a painting. That wouldn't be far off. You can already feel the tightness setting in, the lid drying, the expression freezing. You've been at this for less than an hour, and yet your body feels suspended, like you've been poured into a mold. And perhaps you have. You think about your little sister, still too young for the full routine. She sometimes watches from the doorway, wide-eyed, fascinated. She says she can't wait to be old enough to have her face painted too. You don't have the heart to tell her what it really feels like. The sting when the paste seeps into a tiny cut on your chin. The ache in your jaw from staying silent too long. The way your skin always feels hotter beneath the cool exterior. And yet when you see yourself from a distance when the light is just right, you understand why this persists, why women endure it, why they teach their daughters to do the same. Because in this world, a beautiful face isn't just admired. It's safe. It's power. It opens doors, closes mouths, hides fears. A plain face must explain itself. A beautiful one does not. There's a soft knock at the door, one of the younger maids asking if you're ready for your hair to be styled. The older one answers for you, voice firm and smooth. Not yet, she says. Her face is still drying. And you are drying, still, silent, becoming what they expect. The cloth is cold. Not cold like snow or ice, but the kind of cold that feels like silence pressed against your skin. It's been soaked in rose water and chamomile folded tight and left by the window to steep in the morning air. The maid wraps it gently around your chin, then tightens the knot at the crown of your head. You've done this so many times your body adjusts before you think. The pressure lifts your cheeks ever so slightly. The band beneath your jaw cradles the bone. You cannot speak now, not without smearing the precious poisonous white paint, still drying on your face. But that's fine. You're not supposed to speak. You're supposed to transform. Beauty isn't something you simply wear. Here it's sculpted like marble, like pastry, like an offering. And your face is the altar. A second cloth is wrapped around your forehead. This one pulls your hairline upward. You wince. Just a little. Just enough to feel the tension where your scalp meets your skin. That's a good sign according to your governess. Pain means it's working. High foreheads, she says, are the mark of refined breeding. Women in paintings never have brows that meet their hair. The ideal woman's head looks elongated, noble, ethereal, like someone who has never had a single improper thought. And so plucking begins. Not just a few stray hairs here and there. The entire front portion of your hairline is methodically removed, a few strands at a time. With every pinch of the tweezers, your eyes water. You focus on the corner of the room where the candlelight flickers. Try to distract yourself with the scent of lavender oil, lingering from the bathwater that wasn't yours. Historical accounts like those from 14th century Italian court records and English household guides confirm that this wasn't just vanity. It was fashion, a statement. Upper-class women across Europe deliberately altered their natural hairlines to mimic the aesthetic of Madonnas in illuminated manuscripts and religious iconography. A tall, exposed forehead was seen as a sign of intelligence, chastity, and aristocratic refinement. Some women used pumice stones to rub away new growth. Others applied quicklime to burn the follicles permanently. You tried that once, just once. The pain lasted for days and your scalp flaked for a week. But you didn't complain. No one did. Tidbit. There's one that always makes you shiver. It's said that in certain courts, women who couldn't maintain their ideal facial structure during sleep would be gently bound at night. Linen ties to lift the brow, wooden cheek braces to keep the jaw slim, and pillows, those were often crescent-shaped, to prevent the face from flattening on one side. Even rest had its rules. Tonight you'll sleep with your cheeks wrapped again. It's not just for shaping, it's to preserve what the day achieved. That's what the senior lady-in-waiting says. As if your face were a freshly baked tart, and any slack in the dough might ruin the presentation. Your eyes drift toward the tray on the sideboard. A tiny sculptor's knife rests there not for art, but for beauty. Some women have their moles removed with these, or tiny blemishes sliced off while they're still forming. You haven't had to go that far, yet. But there's a girl you remember, a cousin from Burgundy. She was born with a slightly square jaw, the kind that might look fine on a statue, but was considered common in court. Her mother determined to fix it, had her sleep in chin braces from age 9. By 15, she could barely eat hard fruit, but her face flawless. Historians still debate whether this was more about class than beauty. A tall forehead, narrow jaw, and delicate features were nearly impossible to achieve without significant time resources and trained attendants. In other words, beauty became a code, a visual shorthand that said, I don't labor, I don't sweat, I don't chase anything, I am chaste. The maid returns with a soft brush dipped in ground rice powder and rosehip extract. She dusts over the base you're already wearing, locking in the white glow. You wonder how many layers are on your face now. 3, 4. If someone kissed your cheek, would they taste chalk or vinegar? Not that anyone's supposed to kiss your cheek. You think of a boy once, just once, who looked at you not like a statue, but like a person. He was a musician, not noble, not respectable. And when he said your name, it sounded too real, too alive. You never spoke to him again. But sometimes when you look in the mirror, you wonder what your face would look like if you hadn't wrapped it, plucked it, powdered it. You'll never know. The mirror on your vanity is polished bronze, no glass, no silver. It shows your shape, but not your pores, not your thoughts. You lean in closer. A line is forming beneath one eye. It might be from the smiling you weren't supposed to do yesterday. You quickly press the rice powder over it. The maid says nothing. The brush moves faster now, swift, careful strokes around the temples, the nose, the jaw. Then she steps back and nods. She sees perfection. You feel tight. Wrapped in linen, frozen beneath layers, you're no longer certain where your real face ends and the performance begins. But you've done what's required. You're ready for the next step. Your lips still bare will soon be painted. Your eyes still closed will be lined with soot. For now you are still, and silent, and beautiful. But somewhere beneath the powder and pressure, you wonder quietly, if your face is a mask, then where is yourself? The linen wraps come off one at a time, first the jawline band, then the high forehead strap. And even though you should be used to it by now, your skin tingles as the fabric peels away. The release is not relief, it's simply a pause before the next pressure. You tilt your chin slightly as the maid dabs a final touch of powder into the crease beneath your eye. Your face is blank and pale like a canvas waiting for color, but only just enough. The next ritual is for the eyes. A carved wooden box is opened on the table beside you. Inside lies a collection of small sticks, each no longer than a finger, and darkened at the tip. The maid selects one, carefully holding it between her thumb and the soft curve of her forefinger. She brings it to the candle flame and lets the ends smolder, just enough to warm and darken. Then she blows it out, revealing the soot. It's this soot from charcoal or burnt rosemary that will shape your gaze for the day. She presses it lightly to the outer corner of your eye, tilting your lid back with her other hand. You don't flinch. You've learned not to. The line she draws is soft smudged, not sharp like in paintings of future centuries. Just a smoky haze that elongates the eye and draws attention to its movement. In this world, a glance must speak volumes. And eyes, well, they're not for seeing. They're for being seen. Historical records, especially from French and Italian courts in the 14th and 15th centuries, describe the use of eye cosmetics in surprising detail. Soot from oil lamps, charcoal-powdered antimony, all were employed to darken the lash line. Not to stand out, but to recede into shadow. A mystical eye was preferred to an expressive one. One 15th century beauty manual even suggests that eyes should hold sorrow and distance, as though a noblewoman should always look like she's quietly mourning something too sacred to speak of. And then come the lashes. Curling them is a more delicate task. The stick, still warm from the candle, must be pressed just beneath the lashes and gently rolled upward. Your eyes water slightly as the maid moves from one to the next, careful not to singe your skin. Some women use tiny metal rods heated in the fire. Others pinch with folded parchment and fingers. You're lucky today. The maid is precise. There's no mirror in front of you, but you know the shape by heart. The almond gaze half-lidded, framed in a charcoal whisper. It's not meant to look like makeup. It's meant to look like mystery. Tidbit. In some noble households, there was a belief that your soul could leave through your eyes if they were left uncovered while applying powder. So young girls were trained to keep them half-closed or shielded by a lace veil, while being painted just in case. Of course, you've never lost your soul that way, but there's something to be said for the way it feels when you can't fully see yourself. Your eyes are finished now, but your face isn't. You blink slowly, adjusting to the candlelight again. It's time for rouge. The rouge is not red. Not truly. It's more of a wine-stained rose made from crushed cochineal insects, sometimes mixed with a pinch of cinnamon, or even rabbit's blood. Applied high on the cheekbones, it mimics the flush of health you're not allowed to earn honestly. Running, laughing, sweating, those are not noble things, but blushing without cause. That's refinement. The maid uses her thumb to press the color in, working it, just beneath the powder, so it doesn't sit too loud on your skin. If you were younger, the color would be lighter. If you were unmarried, bolder. Rouge might imply a certain boldness in character. But you are of age now. Your blush must whisper, not speak. Historians still argue whether rouge was used daily or reserved for special occasions. Some sources, like Christine de Pizan's writings, suggest daily adornment was expected in high-ranking courts. Others point out that religious texts of the time often condemned face painting as vanity, a sin, or worse, a deception. But women found ways to walk that line. If the color came from berries or herbs instead of crushed insects, it could be passed off as medicinal. After all, wasn't rosehip salve good for the skin? The hypocrisy of it all isn't lost on you. One moment you're told that painting your face is immoral. The next you're chastised for looking tired, pale, or too plain. You've come to understand that the rules aren't about what's natural, they're about what's visible. And control over that visibility never belongs to you. There's a memory that floats to the surface now uninvited. You were 13, your first formal feast. A relative from Aragon had visited, and you had been presented in your simplest gown cheeks, faintly tinted with beetroot, and breath scented with clove. You thought yourself beautiful. And then she, your aunt, elegant and sharp-tongued, had said, "Eyes like a milkmaid, lips like a girl who reads." You hadn't smiled the rest of the evening. Since then, you've practiced every day. The half-smile, the practiced gaze, the gentle blink, timed perfectly with a bow. You've trained your face as one might train a falcon, precise, proud, obedient, and exhausted. But exhaustion is not part of the ritual, only radiance. A final touch now, your eyebrows. They must not be expressive. That would be too bold, too dramatic. So they are plucked into soft arches, barely there, then darkened ever so slightly with soot and elderberry ink. They frame the face without overtaking it. They suggest thought, not opinion. And there it is. Your face is complete. Not yours, really, but the one the world expects. The maid steps back. The candle flickers in her eyes. She offers no compliment. That, too, is part of the ritual. To compliment would suggest the process is optional, and it never is. You rise slowly, your movements careful not to disturb the powder. Even your posture is a performance. And as you prepare to color your lips, the final act, before stepping into public view, you remind yourself of the only rule that really matters. Be beautiful, but never let it look like you tried. Your lips are the final touch. After all, no part of your face is as charged with meaning, with expectation. They are the last to be painted, but in many ways they are the most scrutinized, most morally weighted. A smile here could mark you as gracious or flirtatious. A frown might reveal more about your mood than you intend. But no matter the expression, the lips are always under judgment. A woman's mouth, after all, can speak volumes whether she wants it to or not. The maid approaches with a small jar in her hands, the contents inside glistening in the candlelight. It's a rich, dark pink, almost burgundy in hue, and when she opens it, you can immediately recognize the scent. A mixture of boiled beetroot water and crushed hibiscus petals, the color slowly seeped into the liquid through hours of careful preparation. It's a familiar smell. In a way, it's been passed down through generations tied to beauty rituals that stretch across centuries. She dips a piece of thin linen into the mix, and the ritual begins. With the utmost care, she presses the fabric against your lips. The motion is gentle, almost reverential, as if each touch were a quiet offering. Tap, lift, tap, lift. There's no smearing, no overdoing it, just the softest, most deliberate application. After all, beauty in this world requires subtlety. Too much. And the line between delicate grace and brazen display becomes dangerously thin. And this, in a way, is where the problem lies. Red lips in the Middle Ages were both desirable and dangerous. Red lips were the mark of vitality, youth, health. But they were also the mark of a woman who could be seen as dangerous. A woman who wasn't afraid to display a touch of temptation, a little too much allure. To put it plainly, red lips were a double-edged sword. The color on your lips now is subtle, barely more than a soft blush. It's the very definition of courtly beauty, delicate, restrained, controlled. Anything more than this, however, would push the boundaries of acceptable. This was especially true in the eyes of the Church, which had its own strict opinions about beauty, vanity, and the moral fiber of women who indulged in such displays. The lips in particular were dangerous territory. Religious sermons often spoke out against cosmetic enhancements, calling them a form of falsehood artifice that masked the true nature of a woman. And in some cases, the penalty was harsh. Women in 13th and 14th century England, particularly those of noble birth, were reprimanded, even excommunicated for wearing visible rouge. It was said to be a form of deception, a way of claiming beauty without earning it through natural means. It was frowned upon as a signal of an impure character. But like so many other unspoken customs, the truth was more complicated. Even as sermons denounced the use of rouge beauty manuals, circulated in the shadows of aristocratic homes, these books contained recipes for natural tints, powders and pastes made from berries, cochineal crushed rose petals and other concoctions designed to create the illusion of flushed cheeks and tinted lips. Some claimed to be medicinal, offering soothing properties for dry lips or the common ailments of winter. Yet everyone knew the truth. These weren't just potions for health. They were meant to beautify. Tidbit: there was a peculiar custom in the courts of Italy. Noblewomen, after applying their lip color, would press their lips to parchment and leave an imprint like a signature, a kiss of fortune. The more symmetrical the print, the better your romantic prospects were said to be. One tale from Milan speaks of a lady-in-waiting who kept a book filled with lip prints from noblewomen, though whether the practice was for fortune-telling or merely gossip remains unclear. The idea that a woman's beauty could be captured in a kiss left behind on paper was in itself a symbol of how beauty and fortune were intertwined in the medieval mind. Back in your room, the tinting is done. Your lips are soft, delicately reddened, an elegant and modest suggestion of color. The shape is subtle, a soft Cupid's bow as expected. It doesn't speak of lust or temptation. It speaks of grace, of obedience, of control. In noble society, a woman's lips were not meant to express her desires, but to hold them in. Your smile is a reflection of virtue, never too eager, never too full. It is a smile reserved for when it is required of you, not something you offer freely. You remember your mother's advice clearly. She had taught you this lesson when you were 12, sitting for your first portrait. Don't purse your lips, she had said. Don't beam. A good woman's smile is like the moon, gentle, indirect, and never full. You practiced it diligently. When you were 15, you were told your smile seemed too eager. So you stopped practicing, let it fade into the background of your life. Now at 17, it's second nature. Your smile is the epitome of restraint, the kind of face that hides more than it reveals. The final touch, however, is the most absurd. A light dusting of flour over your lips. It's done to set the color to prevent any shine from peeking through. Shine in this world speaks of indulgence. It suggests oil luxury excess. A matte finish, however, conveys control, cleanliness, a sense of restraint. And so the flour is gently brushed across your lips, dulling their luster, making them seem all the more refined. Historians still debate the extent to which these beauty rituals were widespread or confined to the most elite circles. Written records are sparse, often muddled with myth or moralizing commentary. However, cosmetic practices, especially when it came to the lips, are documented in various historical sources. In France, England, and northern Italy, court poetry inventories and dowry records mention the use of cosmetics, and women of noble status were expected to own several different pigments, even if they were expected to deny doing so publicly. As the maid steps back and surveys the full picture, your lips, like every other feature, are perfect. They are muted, soft, restrained. Every detail has been accounted for. Your face, now powdered and painted, speaks of nothing but control. And yet behind this carefully crafted facade, you are something more. You are not just the lips that others will admire. You are the quiet woman beneath the layers of artifice. You can't help but wonder as the maid folds the linen away what your lips might say if they were allowed to speak freely. Not about love, perhaps not yet, but about the exhaustion of carrying this constant weight of expectation, of silence. What if beauty wasn't the only thing that was asked of you? What if for once you could simply be? But this, of course, is not the world you live in. And the face that's been created for you will be the one that is seen. It will be the one that's complimented at dinner, admired by distant relatives, scrutinized in letters from suitors. It will be praised, it will be judged, but you will remain hidden, veiled beneath the layers. You will remain the woman who is seen but not heard, the woman who smiles only when it is demanded of her. The maid steps back once more, surveying the final image. You stand in the mirror now, fully adorned, a figure of grace, of beauty, of restraint. But inside you feel a quiet emptiness, not unhappiness, just an absence, a sense of disconnection. You press your finger lightly against your bottom lip, feeling the faint warmth of it beneath your skin. The touch is the only real thing you can feel now. The rest is an illusion, and as you rise to get dressed, the image of the woman in the mirror, perfect, poised, polished, follows you almost as if it is the only thing left to you. The chamber feels heavier now, but not from silence, from scent. As you rise from the stool, the echo of the beauty ritual behind you fades, but something more intimate settles in its place. It clings to the air, soft and dense, like the memory of a song you can't quite place. The fragrance doesn't simply follow you. It surrounds you, seeps into your skin, into the folds of your linen, and into the quiet air itself. It has been steeped, strained, and perfected, not in a single morning, but over generations of whispered recipes and unspoken expectations. You do not bathe in water often, not fully. That would be impractical, even suspicious. Too much water was seen as indulgent in many noble households, particularly in the colder corners of Europe. The church itself frowned upon excessive bathing, associating it with vanity, temptation, or worse, Roman decadence. For unmarried women especially, full immersion could even be considered morally inappropriate, and so your cleanliness becomes a work of layers of rituals that overlap, like fabric, frequent changes of linen, careful herbal rinses, dry powders, and above all, scent. The maid lifts a carved wooden box from the edge of the windowsill. Inside, nestled in folds of fine cloth, are vials of oil, each one infused overnight with peels petals and the slow, patient warmth of a cooking hearth. One contains orange peel and dried lavender, softened with olive oil until the scent turns mellow and round. Another, more mysterious, smells faintly of almond and clove. There's no sharpness here, no alcohol to sting or announce itself. Just base oil soaked and strained and ready to cling to your skin like memory. She starts with your wrists, a single dab pressed with cloth, then behind your ears, then at the base of your throat where the skin is thinnest, where heat pulses closest to the surface. The idea is not to mask anything. It's to let the scent unfold as you move, slowly, secretly, like a grace note that only a few will catch. In the medieval world, perfume carried meaning far beyond the realm of vanity. It was tied to piety, to purity, to health both of the body and the soul. There were stories whispered in monasteries of holy men and women whose bodies gave off the fragrance of roses even in death, a phenomenon called the odor of sanctity. To smell sweet was to suggest inner cleanliness, spiritual favor. So it is no surprise that noble women took to scent as both a symbol and a safeguard. If your body could not be washed in water, it would be bathed in aroma. Not to seduce, but to survive. You know this well. Your scent has been part of your identity since you were 12. On the day of your first bleeding, your mother had dabbed a trace of oil on your collarbone and told you gently, "Walk with grace, even when no one sees." You didn't understand then. Not really. But now you do. The scent you wear is not just fragrance. It is instruction. You carry it like a ribbon of expectation, trailing behind you through every corridor and ceremony. Historical records from noble households in France and Italy, especially from the 13th and 14th centuries, make quiet mention of scent boxes lined with beeswax and cloth, meant to preserve the strength of precious oils. Some perfumes were kept inside pomanders, small decorative containers made of silver or ivory, hung discreetly on waist ribbons or tucked into sleeves. Others were infused into gloves or sewn into the lining of gowns, so that the scent would rise as the wearer moved. The belief that fragrance could protect you from disease was widespread, particularly during outbreaks of plague. There are accounts of nobles pressing scented sachets to their noses, convinced that the sweetness would keep away the deadly air. And still, even amid such urgency, scent could carry private weight. In some parts of medieval Spain, perfumed gloves were considered almost scandalous, too intimate, too suggestive. One letter from a 15th century noblewoman complains that her sister received scented gloves and a whispered note from a suitor, and promptly locked herself in her chamber for an entire day. Whether from offense or intrigue, the letter never said. But the gesture spoke volumes. Your maid finishes the final touch behind your ear, and the scent settles, not overpowering, not floral, just familiar. Clean, you inhale, and it brings you back to every ceremony, every first impression, every moment you've been called upon to be perfect. You know exactly how you're expected to smell. The same way you know exactly how to speak, how to hold your hands, how to lower your eyes at the appropriate moment. Every part of you has been prepared. Now comes the dressing. Your gown hangs on a nearby chair, its folds arranged like a sleeping creature. Gothic in design, tight at the bodice, high at the waist, with sleeves that trail like ribbons of parchment. It is a garment that commands posture. It does not accommodate. It instructs. When you wear it, you don't merely look graceful. You must behave gracefully. The fabric itself trains your back sculpts, your walk narrows your silhouette. Even standing feels like performance. She begins with the underlayers. First the chemise, plain, lightly scented, soft. Then the shift. Then the gown itself. Each layer adds weight, structure, meaning. The outer dress is heavy but familiar. You've worn it or something like it for years now. Your body has learned to carry beauty like armor. As she begins to lace the bodice, your breath comes shallower. There's a moment, quick, fleeting, where you consider asking her to loosen the stays just a little. But you don't. You never do. The tighter it fits, the straighter you stand. And straightness is the point. A noblewoman must appear composed, contained as if lifted by invisible strings. Fashion historians have studied these garments extensively. Gothic silhouettes, particularly during the 14th and 15th centuries, were designed to elongate the body. Everything pointed upward, the neckline, the headdress, even the trailing sleeves. It was as though women were meant to float, rather than walk, to exist somewhere between the earthly and the divine. One chronicler described a lady entering court as if stitched to the air, her figure like a prayer. But this elegance had a moral undercurrent. Posture was not just aesthetic, it was ethical. A slouching woman was suspect, melancholic, slothful, possibly deceitful. A straight back signaled discipline, readiness, marriageability. In many noble homes, girls were trained early. Some balanced books on their heads. Others walked long corridors with rods behind their backs. You remember doing all of it. At 13, you practiced every evening with a candlestick in each hand and a plate perched delicately on your head. If the plate tipped, you began again. Praise was rare, but approval, silent and restrained, was given through a single nod. There are even records of noblewomen who wore tight lacing under their night shifts, just in case a servant entered unexpectedly. A lady's spine, one etiquette manual advised, should never be caught at rest. Beauty, even in sleep, must never slip. Your shoes are the final detail. Soft leather, slightly pointed, with soles too thin for gravel. They're not meant for walking long distances. You won't need to. Your day will pass in chambers and corridors between windows and sitting stools. You'll glide from hour to hour like a figure in a tapestry, composed, contained. As you move toward the door, you are suddenly aware of every inch of yourself. The tightness of the bodice, the quiet cling of scent, the careful elegance of your walk. You are not uncomfortable exactly. You're simply composed. Every thread of your clothing, every layer of your skin has been curated into silence. And for a moment, you feel the weight of all that polish, all that preparation. And yet beneath the layers, beneath the scent and silk and lace, a small knot of longing begins to stir. Not rebellion, not sadness. Just the quiet ache of someone who has performed beauty for so long that she wonders what might remain when the costume is removed. You don't want to undo anything. Not yet. But you feel it. A breath caught in the ribs. A tiny flickering hope that one day perhaps you might still be seen, not just as a figure of elegance, but as a person. For now, though, the ritual is complete. You are dressed, scented, restrained. Every surface of you whispers control. Every shadow of you carries the grace you were taught to wear like a second skin. The maid opens the chamber door. Light pours in. And your day, your beautiful silent day, has finally begun. The sun has shifted slightly now, sliding across the polished stone floor in soft strips of gold. It touches the edge of your gown, warming the threadbare fringe, and you pause for just a moment in the doorway. The perfume clings to your sleeves. Your spine is straight. Your lips are still gently pressed, powdered, and silent. And yet, even before you've stepped into the hallway, you feel it again, that sense that you are not simply dressed, but disguised, prepared, presented. You are in all appearances perfect, but perfection has a peculiar weight to it. Not heavy exactly, not like grief or hunger, no more like a veil. Something that lies gently over your entire body, soft and see-through, and yet somehow makes everything feel slightly distant, slightly delayed. As you make your way through the corridor, every glance from a servant, every subtle nod from a chamberlain affirms it. You are exactly as you should be, not a strand of hair out of place, not a crease in your posture. And this quiet approval is the reward for all the labor done in silence. It is the currency of your station. Your beauty is no longer for yourself. It is for the world. The ritual, of course, doesn't end with preparation. It is only just beginning. You are led to the small solar the room where guests may be received in passing a space not quite public, but not private either. It's where noble women do embroidery, read prayers aloud, or play the lute with adequate delicacy. It's also where first impressions are shaped, where suitors, brothers-in-law, or distant relatives catch a glimpse of you at just the right angle, where every tilt of the neck might mean something. You sit quietly, hands folded on your lap. Your sleeves drape like parchment curls over the edge of the chair. The chair is carved walnut hard beneath the fabric, but you do not shift. Movement, unless necessary, can be read as fidgeting. Fidgeting is unbecoming, and unbecoming is a kind of sin. At the far end of the room, your cousin enters. She is 2 years older, married now, and wears a veil over her brow, as a signal of her status. She glides across the rug with confidence, not arrogance, but a kind of settled presence, as if she no longer needs to perform quite so tightly. She greets you with a smile, then lowers herself onto a stool beside you. The two of you say very little. The conversation is light weather music, a passing comment about the bishop's niece. And yet beneath the words, something pulses comparison. You can feel her eyes scan your face, the slope of your shoulders, the clarity of your skin. Just as you unthinkingly register the richness of her rings, the precision of her veil, the faintest flush on her cheeks that might or might not be natural. You don't mean to measure each other, but you do. It is the air you've been trained to breathe. Medieval chronicles rarely speak of this feminine scrutiny. Most historical records from the 12th to 15th centuries were written by men, monks, clerics, court officials who noted women as accessories to alliances, mothers of heirs or scandals in waiting. But letters between noble women when they survive hint at something more nuanced. A world of comparisons, quiet competitions, coded compliments. One 14th century letter from a French noblewoman to her cousin remarks, "Your sleeves are longer than fashion, which flatters the hand, though I am told shorter ones do not catch the ink when writing." It was a compliment, and also not. This too is part of the beauty ritual. The performance of elegance doesn't end when you're alone. It intensifies in the presence of other women, especially those close to your age, especially those already married. The conversation ends gently and she leaves. You remain still as a painted figure until a servant enters with a polished silver tray. Upon it lies your mirror, not the hand mirror, not the polished bronze. This one is tall, nearly your height, polished to a smooth, reflective sheen, and framed in dark wood. It has no embellishment, no carving. It is pure function reflection without interpretation. You step in front of it, and there she is, the woman you have become today. Hair coiled in perfect braids, lips soft and dry, skin, powdered cheeks, gently tinted eyes, shadowed just enough to look thoughtful, not sleepy. Your reflection is immaculate, and yet the longer you look, the less you recognize her. Because she is not quite you, is she? She is the version of you built from hours of preparation, from silent touches and layered scents, from powdered restraint and sewn expectations. She is you, edited, curated, translated into the language of acceptability. You reach up slowly and touch the base of your throat. Your fingers find the clasp of your pendant, an heirloom passed down from your grandmother. You wore it last week while coughing from smoke in the kitchens. You wore it when you cried softly after your embroidery was picked apart by your tutor. You wore it when you felt real. And so you cling to it now, just for a breath. There is no rebellion in you. Not really. You've done everything asked. You've been good, gracious, obedient. You've followed every step, every instruction. You've worn the veil of beauty so carefully that no one, not even your reflection, could question your worth. But now as you stare into the glass, a quiet ache forms at the base of your ribs. It's not sadness exactly, just distance. The kind of emotional blurring that happens when you've performed a role so well for so long that you're not sure where the costume ends. You whisper something under your breath, not words exactly, but a sound. Something only you can hear, just to remind yourself you still exist beneath the paint and powder. And then you smile. A careful smile, the one you practiced as a girl, the one your portrait wore, the one that says, "I am fine." The mirror accepts it, reflects it back, confirms your perfection. You step away. Behind you the reflection remains, frozen, silent. But you are moving again, slowly, softly. And with that movement comes the next part of your day, the meetings, the mealtime glances, the long hours of being seen but never heard. And this brings you gently to the end of your morning ritual. Everything has been applied, arranged, composed. Every piece of you now speaks the language of refinement. And for those who will see you, that will be enough. But inside, as you take a final breath, you know what it all costs. You know that beauty in this world isn't simply about being lovely. It is about being small, contained, and still. You glance at the sky through the tall window. A single white cloud drifts lazily past the gray stone chimney. Somewhere far away, a baker is shouting at his apprentice. A cartwheel screeches on cobblestones. A goose flaps its wings and breaks the silence of a courtyard. And here inside your perfumed quiet, you feel like a painting that no longer knows what it's meant to show. But the day must go on. And so with practiced grace, you rise from your seat and step through the archway. Because outside this room, other women, other rituals await. They may not wear your gown. They may not speak your tongue. But they too have known the strange weight of beauty. And in the quiet spaces of history, their stories are waiting. Let's go find them. The scent of sandalwood arrives before anything else, soft creamy, a little earthy and almost sweet. It drifts through the open lattice windows like a ghost of morning prayers, clinging to the corners of silk curtains and the carved edges of the teak dressing screen. And you are already awake, not by the sound of a bell or the shuffle of servants, but by the rhythm of the temple drums that echo faintly from the riverbanks at dawn. This is not a stone-cold castle in the misty hills of Europe. This is the palace of the Chola queens, southern India, around the 11th century. And beauty here begins with water, with warmth, with ritual. You sit on a low flat stool, knees drawn modestly together, as your maid begins her morning preparation. A wide bronze bowl of lukewarm buffalo milk sits nearby, faintly steaming, mixed with a few drops of jasmine and a small swirl of turmeric. This is no indulgent bath, not in the way later European queens might have imagined it. It is more like a devotional cleanse, a symbolic washing away of sleep impurity and yesterday's dust. With a soft cloth, the maid dips and wrings, then strokes your arms and collarbone, your face and ankles. She hums as she works a temple tune you half remember from your childhood. And when she finishes, she leaves no slick residue, no perfume overload, just the faintest scent of earth and milk and skin that feels like silk, cooled under moonlight. Next comes the paste. Sandalwood crushed into powder and mixed with rosewater overnight becomes a creamy poultice, smooth cooling and slightly golden. She spreads it across your forehead first, then your cheeks, your neck, your shoulders. It's not a mask, not a cover-up. It's a treatment, a prayer in paste form. In Chola India, sandalwood was more than cosmetic. It was sacred. Used in temples to anoint idols and offerings to deities, and in rituals marking purity and devotion, it carried an aura of divine femininity. To wear it on the body was not just beautification. It was alignment with the sacred. While the paste dries to a soft matte finish, she massages your scalp with coconut oil warmed over a flame. Her fingers are slow, methodical working the oil through your thick black braid. The hair is a crown, yes, but also a story. Each braid a verse, each scent a sign of status. For noble women in the Chola court, long hair was not simply maintained, it was worshipped. Epic poems of the time described heroines by the fragrance of their hair, before the color of their eyes. To smell of coconut or jasmine, or even cardamom-infused oil, was to broadcast refinement and readiness, like wearing your grace on your scalp. And then, as she gathers your locks into a tight coil at the nape of your neck, she slides in a string of white lotus buds, freshly picked and lightly damp. The petals brush your shoulder with each breath. In this place, flowers aren't just decorations. They are extensions of the self. Offerings to the gods, yes, but also to the people who will see you today. Your family, the priest, the tutor, the neighboring noblewomen whose glances will slide across your brow with practiced discretion. You've been taught to look serene but never blank, to move slowly but never lazily. Your beauty is never yours alone. It is always in service of harmony of household, of dharma of image. Historical sources from the Chola period are surprisingly rich, not only in temple inscriptions and royal grants, but also in bronze sculptures, devotional hymns, and poetic epics. The 10th century Tamil text, Silapatikaram, describes noble heroines smearing themselves with sandalwood lotus paste and musk before ritual gatherings. Temple frescoes show women with intricate hairdos wrapped in transparent silk, their limbs glowing faintly with golden powders. These are not exaggerations, they are ideals etched into the cultural memory of an empire. And while it's tempting to think this beauty was only spiritual, only ritualistic, it was also political. A woman's presentation reflected her family's wealth, her husband's dignity, and her own inner order. Harmony outside mirrored harmony within. Clean skin, fragrant hair, precise movement, all were evidence that you understood your role in the great order of things. Tidbit. Well, one rather unusual ritual from the Chola elite involved the offering of mirror prayers. Before important festivals, noblewomen would sit before large polished copper mirrors and recite mantras, while applying their cosmetics, not to admire their reflection, but to consecrate the self-image. Some believed that if the gods found your reflection orderly and devout, your blessings for the year would multiply. And so mirrors were sometimes decorated with garlands and placed in the prayer alcove afterward, just like idols. As the paste dries fully, the maid gently wipes it away with a clean cotton cloth. Your skin is smooth now, not painted, not powdered, but quietly radiant. You feel neither tight nor weighed down, just ready. There is something quietly powerful in this softness. A woman who knows her place in the cycle of day and night, in the echo of temple bells, in the glance of gods. The final step is a touch of kohl, not the heavy medieval smudge from Europe. This is fine, almost like ink made from burnt almond husks and clarified butter. She dots it lightly at the corners of your eyes, not to dramatize, but to protect. In Ayurvedic belief, kohl shields the eyes from the harshness of the sun and the dryness of wind. It's both medicine and makeup, protective and pretty. You sit up, spine long, neck tall. Your sari, already draped in careful pleats, rustles faintly as you move. The fabric dyed in natural indigo, and gold gleams when the light catches it. You rise not as a figure in a costume, but as a full reflection of your world. Fragrant, composed, balanced. But just before you step through the curtain to the main courtyard, you pause. Not to fix your hair, not to check your lips, but to take one quiet breath and feel, if only briefly, the warmth of your own skin. The temple drums have long since faded, but something inside you hums with their rhythm. You are part of a lineage now, beauty, devotion, identity, all woven together in sandalwood and milk. Tomorrow you'll do it again, and yet, maybe not exactly the same, because every morning, just like every ritual, holds the tiniest space for change, even within tradition, especially there. The scent lingers as you pass beneath the carved lintel sandalwood jasmine river milk, but the air shifts the moment you imagine another morning light. Now it is warmer, drier. The wind tastes of dust and honey, of distant drums and cooking fires, and beneath your bare feet is not polished stone or tiled floor, but packed earth, smooth, sun-baked, and familiar. You are not in southern India anymore. You are somewhere along the Niger River basin, in the heart of 14th century Mali, where the empire pulses with trade gold and memory. And beauty here does not come from temples or powdered shells. It comes from story, from skin, from braids. You sit quietly in the shaded courtyard of your family compound, a shallow bowl resting beside you. Inside, thick golden butter, creamy, nutty, and just barely warm from the morning sun. This is shea. It has no perfume, no imported tincture, and yet it smells like home. Your mother sits behind you, her legs stretched out, a calabash gourd at her hip, filled with combs and carved pins. Her fingers are already moving through your hair, unhurried, sure. This ritual, though humble in appearance, is an inheritance, an archive passed down in touch and shape more reliable than any scroll. She begins by working the shea into your scalp, gently massaging it with the base of her thumbs. The butter melts into the strands, softening, strengthening, protecting. This is not just cosmetic. In the Sahel sun, it is practical, medicinal, sacred. Historical accounts from the region, especially through oral traditions, and Islamic travelers like Ibn Battuta, speak of women with shining skin and tightly coiled hair arranged in complex braids. It wasn't vanity. It was record-keeping, status, identity, an entire language whispered in pattern and curl. As she massages your skin, gleams first your shoulders, then your arms, then your face. There is no need for powders here. No tint, no rouge, just the even sheen of moisture over dark skin catching the light like burnished copper. Among Mali's nobility, this glow was a kind of signature. It meant health, care, belonging. When Mansa Musa, legendary ruler of the Mali Empire, traveled to Cairo in the 1320s, it was said the women of his caravan gleamed so brightly in the sun the locals mistook them for royalty. In truth, they were simply prepared, anointed, seen, tidbit. Among some noble families, it was common to name particular braid styles after famous events or ancestors. A spiral on the crown might signify a grandmother who survived a famine. A zigzag meant a child born under an eclipse. Some styles were even banned, reserved only for queens or women of the court. To wear the wrong braid could be considered impersonation. And yet others were invented just for fun: the river's ripple, the monkey's path, the ant's map. A woman's head could become a map, a riddle, a diary spoken in hair. And as the braiding begins tight, rhythmic, almost meditative, you close your eyes. Your scalp tingles not from pain, but from memory. These fingers know you. They've braided every season of your life, festivals, deaths, first moons, last moons. You were never taught a beauty ideal from a book. You learned it from your aunt's hands, from the women at the well, from the way your grandmother used to hum while trimming her nails with a shard of bone. There is no mirror here, only the sun reflecting off a shallow bowl of water. But you don't need one. You'll know the shape by feel. And later, when the braids are complete and the butter has dried, you will walk to the marketplace and hear it in the quiet compliments of other women. The way they glance, then nod. The way they say nothing but look twice. Historians still argue whether the specific braid patterns of pre-colonial West Africa can be accurately reconstructed. Many of the traditions were oral fluid, ever-shifting, but carved figurines, terracotta heads, and traveler accounts offer glimpses. And modern griots, the keepers of community memory, still teach the meanings of certain shapes. In this world, beauty is not only preserved, it is performed. Your mother pauses only once to sip water from the gourd and stretch her fingers. Then she picks up a small wooden stick and begins to carve the last line sharp and perfect, just above your ear. You hear the birds, the goats, the laughter of cousins in the outer yard. But mostly you hear her breathing, steady, familiar, like a song you've always known. When it's done, she leans forward and kisses the top of your head, not to bless it, just to say quietly that it's beautiful and that you are ready. You rise slowly, your back straight, your face soft. Your hands slide over your arms, slick with shea, and the sun catches your collarbone like a painting. There is no corset, no powder, no palette, and yet you are entirely composed. And somewhere far beyond the riverbank, a drum begins again, as if beauty had a rhythm of its own, and it does. The light shifts again, softening, bending. You feel the weight of the sun change not the heat itself, but its texture. It becomes filtered, golden, like light passing through silk and stone. And when you open your eyes, you are in Angkor, not the Angkor of tourists and postcards, but the Angkor of the 12th century alive devotional breathing, with the sound of bells and sandalwood smoke. Here, beauty is not just an adornment, it is an offering. You are preparing for the full moon procession at the Bayon Temple, where every step is part of a sacred choreography. But before that, before the incense, the chanting, the flower garlands, comes the quiet ritual of becoming ready. Not just spiritually, but physically, because in the court of the Khmer kings, physical grace was inseparable from virtue. Your beauty must reflect harmony between earth and heaven body, and spirit gesture and silence. You sit cross-legged on a woven mat, surrounded by small lacquered bowls. One holds crushed seashell powder, sifted until fine as silk. Another the dried red petals of hibiscus blossoms. A third cooled rice paste infused with pandan leaf. These are your tools. not synthetic or secretive, but natural and fragrant, each one linked to purification. Your maid begins by mixing the shell powder with coconut oil, creating a soft, pearlescent paste. She applies it along your neck, shoulders, and collarbones, moving in slow, circular motions. It leaves a faint shimmer, not glossy, but luminous in a way that catches torchlight like moonstone. In Khmer poetry and sculpture, this glow was likened to the aura of the Apsaras celestial dancers, who embodied ideal beauty, always graceful, never still. The hibiscus powder comes next, patted gently onto your cheeks and lips. The color is subtle, a deep coral pink that warms your features without overwhelming them. There are no sharp lines. Nothing is drawn or exaggerated. In fact, anything too pronounced would be considered improper. In this world, restraint is beauty. Modesty is elegance. And a woman's face should resemble a lotus at dawn open, but not too open. What fascinates you most is that this cosmetic ritual is not done in secret. It is not hidden from men. It is not scorned by priests. It is in fact a shared cultural practice, visible, accepted, even expected. Historical bas-reliefs at Angkor Wat depict women in procession, with carefully adorned faces, elaborate jewelry, and upright posture. Travelers from China and India described Khmer noblewomen as dignified and serene, their appearances reflecting the harmony of their surroundings. And while temples were primarily for prayer and kingship, they also served as public theaters for these rituals of appearance. There is something oddly comforting about it, that your beauty does not need to be whispered into being. It can be sung. Even the perfume you wear has purpose. Made from steeped lotus root and star anise, it is meant to cool the body and clarify the mind. You dab a few drops behind your ears, just beneath your earlobes. The scent is gentle, almost watery, not meant to entice, but to balance. One detail always makes you smile. When girls first enter service at the temple court, they are taught how to grind betel leaves for their elders, how to keep the oil lamps trimmed, and most importantly, how to press flower pigment into rice paper to create cheek color. The best students learn to adjust shades with turmeric or charcoal dust. The most skillful can match a hue to the mood of the moon. On full moons, warmer tones. On waning moons, paler ones. It is beauty as lunar rhythm. No one calls this vanity, because it isn't. It is reverence. When your face is made beautiful, it is not for a man's gaze. It is for the gods, for the ancestors, for the harmony of the body within the sacred calendar. Historians still debate how much of these temple rituals were ceremonial versus daily life. Some scholars argue that cosmetic preparation was reserved for festivals or performances. Others point to the abundance of personal grooming tools found at Angkorian archaeological sites, combs, jars, pestles as evidence that these practices were part of everyday noble routines. Either way, the presence of beauty in Khmer life was not accidental. It was deliberate and deeply woven into the spiritual fabric. As your maid finishes, she adjusts the folds of your sampot, the silk cloth wrapped around your waist, and gently tucks a white lotus bud into your hair. No mirror is needed. You are not preparing to be admired. You are preparing to participate. And when the procession begins, and the drums echo against the stone towers, you will walk without haste. You will glow but quietly. You inhale once more coconut, hibiscus, night jasmine, and rise to your feet. Somewhere behind you, the temple bells begin to stir. It is time, and though this beauty will fade by morning tonight, it belongs to something eternal. The light shifts again, softening into a golden haze that curls like incense across the floor. You blink once, twice, and when your eyes adjust, the world has changed. You're no longer in the cool, darkened halls of medieval Europe. Instead, you find yourself surrounded by carved sandstone and lotus ponds, the heat rising not from heavy fabric or burning hearths, but from the earth itself, humid, fragrant, alive. You're in Angkor, heart of the Khmer Empire, and beauty here breathes with the rhythm of prayer and performance. There's no rush. The day moves slowly like honey sliding down the side of a clay bowl. You're seated in a quiet courtyard shaded by tall banana leaves and ancient temple walls. A young maid kneels beside you, arranging small dishes on a woven mat, each filled with something soft, fragrant, or strange. Powdered seashells, crushed hibiscus petals, rice paste scented with pandan leaf, a wooden comb soaked in coconut oil. These are not decorations. These are instruments of preparation. Because here beauty is not just for weddings or festivals. It is devotion. The body is a vessel of harmony, and to adorn it is to balance the visible and invisible. It is said that a well-prepared face can bring honor to ancestors, clarity to mind, and peace to the spirit. The temple dancers know this, and so do the women of court. The first touch is the seashell powder, collected from distant coasts, ground into a shimmer, so fine it clings to skin like dew. Your maid mixes it with warm coconut oil and pats it gently across your forehead, collarbones, and shoulders. The result isn't shine, it's radiance. In Khmer sculpture, apsaras, the heavenly dancers, are carved with this same soft gleam. You understand now. They weren't symbols. They were ideals. Next comes the hibiscus, dried and ground into a rich coral dust. It's tapped lightly onto your cheeks with a folded strip of rice paper. No mirrors are used. She reads your face with practiced ease, tracing the contours you don't even think about. The color is subtle, warm, natural, not quite floral. Too bold would be disruptive, draw attention away from serenity. And here, serenity is the highest virtue. Your face must look like it belongs in a temple mural, soft, modest, timeless. A warm bowl of rice paste follows, not for color but for texture. The maid smooths it over your hands and forearms, wiping it away with cool water. It leaves your skin pliant and matte like fine silk. These steps are slow, deliberate. There's no chattering, only the sound of breeze rustling bamboo leaves and distant gongs calling monks to midday prayers. And yet this isn't just about appearance. The substances themselves are symbolic. Shells evoke the ocean's vastness. Hibiscus, fleeting beauty. Rice, nourishment and blessing. Every application is a small, wordless prayer. And because Angkor's calendar revolves around both sun and moon, your makeup might even reflect the heavens. On full moon days, your cheeks are slightly warmer. During waning moons, the tones become paler, softer. You become part of the sky. Historical records from Chinese envoys describe Khmer noblewomen as elegant and clean with fragrant bodies and intricately combed hair. Reliefs from Angkor Wat depict them mid-procession, their postures upright, their expressions serene. In these carvings you see echoes of yourself because these rituals, while deeply personal, are also shared. Beauty is not confined to the private chamber. It moves in public, visible and accepted. And no one calls it vanity. The scent you wear is a blend of lotus root, star anise, and clove. It's steeped for days in cool clay jars, then strained into thin copper vials. You dab a few drops at the base of your throat. The fragrance is calming, almost medicinal. In Khmer belief, fragrance is memory. It can guide ancestors home, calm anxious spirits, and set the tone of a room without a single word. You don't wear it to attract attention. You wear it to create balance. You recall being 12 when you were first taught to press cheek color from hibiscus petals into rice paper. A quiet ritual passed down not from priestess to novice, but from aunt to niece, sister to sister. You learned to match pigment to mood. If your day was solemn, you used fewer strokes. If joyous, one more. It wasn't a rule, it was intuition. And over time, your hand learned restraint. There's a story you love. That one maidservant in the royal court, particularly skilled with flower pigments, once created a full palette of face colors based on the monsoon. Pale pink for dry season mornings, deep coral for thunder-heavy evenings. She never wrote it down, only passed it on through whispers. Her name was never recorded, but her colors, they say, still live in the faces of women like you. No one shames you for participating in this. Men do not scoff. Priests do not condemn. Even the king's advisors know that ritual appearance is part of palace rhythm. The temple is not just for prayer, it's for presence. When you step inside adorned and composed, you are not acting. You are aligning. There is some scholarly debate on how widespread these cosmetic rituals were. Some historians argue they were limited to court festivals or sacred performances. Others point to the abundance of grooming tools, combs, mirrored bronze pigment jars found across Angkorian residences. These weren't merely theatrical props. They were lived objects, part of a daily dance between devotion and adornment. Your hair is unwrapped now, combed in long, gentle strokes. It's not styled high or rigid. It falls loose but orderly, with a single orchid tucked behind your left ear. In Khmer tradition, flowers carry messages. An orchid means readiness, grace. You are not hiding. You are presenting yourself body-spirit scent, and silence as whole. And yet even now you feel a flicker of self-consciousness. Not shame exactly, but awareness. You think of how different this feels from the powdered, concealed beauty of other courts you've known. In Angkor, beauty is not silence. It is harmony. The maid adjusts your sampot, a long silk wrap with golden threads. It clings and flows in equal measure. You breathe deeply, grounding yourself. Your reflection in the polished bronze basin beside you looks back not as a stranger, but as someone centered. Someone composed not for applause, but for ceremony. Evening approaches. The temple bells stir again, and the first torches are lit. The air smells of wet stone, jasmine, and sandalwood. You will walk soon in the procession, lotus petals in hand, behind the king's dancers, and ahead of the water-bearers. Your face will not command attention. It will join a river of others, serene, sacred, aligned. And as you rise slow and steady, there is no performance, no tension, just the quiet certainty that you are for this moment exactly as you should be. You leave the courtyard, each step cushioned by woven mats and trailing cloth. The sun has gone low, casting gold along the edge of the temple towers. A small girl hands you a garland of frangipani. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. In this world, beauty speaks its own language. And so do you. You step forward and the air changes again. The warmth remains, but the fragrance deepens richer. Now laced with the unmistakable notes of rosewater saffron and bitter orange. A new world folds in around you, not as humid or lush, but no less luxurious. You are in Safavid Persia, where elegance is woven into ritual, and fragrance is more than accessory. It is presence, it is power, it is prayer. The courtyard is tiled in turquoise and onyx, the sky above it endless and blue. You are seated beneath a wooden canopy carved with delicate floral motifs, the kind artisans spent months perfecting. A breeze stirs the sheer curtains, carrying with it a scent that feels ancient. Not cloying or heavy, just lingering. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. In this world, beauty doesn't shout. It whispers. A woman's presence is meant to echo after she's left the room. Beside you, a tray is laid out with intention. Scented oils, kohl henna, rose petal jam, sugared almonds, and a bowl of cool pomegranate seeds. These are not luxuries for idle women. They are part of a morning ritual as important as prayer or poetry. You begin with rose water. A copper vessel has been sitting in the sun since dawn, infusing with buds handpicked in Kashan. A servant dips her fingers into it and pats the water gently onto your neck wrists behind your ears. The sensation is quieting, not just physical but spiritual. Persian beauty practices during the Safavid dynasty were closely entwined with ideas of virtue, refinement, and balance. While European accounts fixated on veils and seclusion, They often miss the subtle world within one, filled with personal rituals and invisible expressions of selfhood. Women in the elite circles of Isfahan and Shiraz were not simply hidden, they were cultivated. Beauty was not abandoned. It was internalized, controlled, and offered in careful measure. You move next to scenting your hair. A mixture of sweet almond oil, frankincense, and crushed jasmine has been warming in a brass bowl by the hearth. You lean forward, and your maid gently massages it into your scalp, using slow circular movements. This isn't for shine. It's for serenity. The scent will stay with you for days, even under your veil, a reminder that you carry your world within. Your face is not painted, but enhanced with small gestures. A fine line of kohl is drawn along the upper lash, curving ever so slightly at the outer edge. It doesn't dramatize, it defines. The eyes are believed to be the doorway to the soul, and modest enhancement is seen as honoring that truth. No rouge, no powder. Just a soft brushing of starch across the brow to neaten their shape. You glance at the silver mirror before you. The reflection is subtle, elegant, yours. There is debate among historians as to how widespread these practices were outside the noble and merchant classes. Some argue the intricate beauty rituals described in Safavid poetry were aspirational, confined to the elite harem and court women. Others point to surviving beauty manuals, apothecary lists, and personal letters that mention these routines as part of everyday domestic life, suggesting a quieter, more universal culture of personal care among women. One tidbit passed down through oral tradition tells of a noblewoman who scented her favorite manuscripts with orange blossom and saffron. Each page, when turned, released a soft fragrance that lingered as long as the poem did. It was said guests could identify her library from across the palace, guided only by scent. Her books, like her presence, never entered a room quietly. You nibble a pomegranate seed slowly, its tartness grounding you. You're not meant to dazzle. You're meant to endure. Persian beauty in this era is all about restraint, precision. A well-scented woman is like a well-composed ghazal, structured, layered, elegant in rhythm. You think of the women poets whose verses you memorized as a child. They wrote of gardens, lost longing, and always of fragrance. Her scent remained after she left the room. One verse reads, and I forgot the sound of her voice. That was the power of presence in this world. A trace of rose, a brush of cardamom, a silence that said everything. Your hands are wrapped in silk for half an hour, then unwrapped and rubbed with a paste made from lemon honey and crushed sandalwood. It's not for show, just softness, just control. Beauty here does not parade itself. It is revealed slowly in whispers, in gestures and pauses. Later you will step into the garden courtyard where citrus trees bloom beside marble fountains. You'll walk with measured steps, veil drawn lightly across your chin, and the scent of your skin will mingle with the scent of the trees. You will not speak unless addressed, and even then your words will be few. But every detail of your appearance, the faint shimmer on your cheekbones, the pressed line of your sash, the way your scent blends with rose will have already said enough. And yet you wonder, do you exist more in your absence than in your presence? You are seen most clearly when you are not visible, remembered by what lingers. And that's a strange kind of beauty, isn't it? One that demands to be forgotten, just enough to remain unforgettable. You gather your robes close. The breeze carries the call to prayer from a nearby tower. In the hush that follows you, close your eyes. You feel the warmth of the almond oil on your neck, the lingering sweetness of the pomegranate, the fine powder at the edge of your lashes. You do not need to look into the mirror again. You are complete. You cross into another silence, this one cooler, more austere. The fragrance of orange blossom fades, and in its place comes a crispness that smells like starch and pine. The warm curve of Persia recedes behind you, and in its place stands the clarity of Joseon-era Korea. Here, beauty isn't something you wear. It's something you cultivate quietly, like discipline, like grace. You're standing in a courtyard of flat stones and trimmed shrubs, the air almost still. The morning is pale, milk-colored almost, and so is everything else. The walls are whitewashed. The robes are subdued, made of rami or cotton, always pressed flat. No one raises their voice. And you've already begun your preparations before the sun has properly risen. A basin of rice water sits on a wooden stool. It's not decorative. It's not fragrant. But when you bend over it and splash the cool liquid across your face, it feels steadying. This is no indulgence, it's balance. Rice water has been used for centuries across East Asia. But in Joseon, Korea, it became a quietly essential part of a woman's cleansing ritual. It brightened the skin's softened texture and left behind a faint sheen. Nothing artificial, just a glow. A soft dewiness that reflected the values of modesty and purity cherished by the Neo-Confucian court. You pat your face dry with a square of undyed cloth. Your maid hands you a small ceramic jar, smooth and slightly chilled. Inside, finely ground pearl powder is mixed with ginseng root and a touch of honey. This is your cosmetic, if it can be called that. It's more of a treatment, a tone, a quiet enhancement. It doesn't color your skin. It harmonizes with it. In Joseon, Korea, beauty was never about transformation. It was about refinement. You look into the mirror, which is not glass, but polished brass. The reflection is slightly blurred, just enough to prevent vanity. Your features seem distant, softened. You adjust your joguri collar, carefully folding it twice, letting the white lining show just the right amount. You've practiced this fold since you were 10 years old. It still doesn't come easily. Nothing worth doing ever does. Historical records from the Joseon court detail cosmetic recipes, beauty manuals, and moral codes governing female appearance. Official court protocol emphasized restraint. Women were to appear graceful and pale, their movements slow, their gaze downward. A woman's skin ideally should be like white jade, unblemished, luminous, and cool to the touch. Anything more colorful, more forceful, risked being interpreted as flirtatious or undignified, and yet the expectations were exhaustive. Your maid now brushes your eyebrows into soft arcs using a paste made of ash and pine soot, diluted in sesame oil. No tweezing, no harsh lines, just the gentle suggestion of expression. Your lips, on the other hand, are left mostly bare, perhaps a dab of quince syrup, just enough to prevent cracking. A red mouth would be considered too bold, too foreign, unless you were preparing for a ceremonial occasion, in which case a tiny petal of color might be allowed in the center of the lower lip, only never reaching the corners. There is a phrase whispered among the court ladies: a woman's beauty must be known before she speaks. You're not sure how you feel about that, but you've learned to obey its message. One quirky story from this era tells of a scholar's daughter who was praised not for her looks, but for the glow of her forehead at dusk. It was said that she stood in the courtyard every evening as the sun faded and the light hit her skin with such quiet perfection that even the palace scribes paused their ink to look. She never wore makeup, only washed her face with barley water and used jade rollers at dawn. A government official once offered marriage purely based on a glimpse of her silhouette through paper doors. You wonder again who this ritual is for. The elders, your mother. The man you may one day be assigned to, or perhaps it's for no one at all. Perhaps this stillness, this devotion to invisible elegance, is a kind of prayer in itself. Historians continue to debate the extent to which Joseon-era women were active participants in their own beauty culture. Some argue that these rituals were acts of resistance, quiet ways to reclaim control in a society that prized obedience. Others suggest they were internalized performances, ingrained from childhood, and maintained through social pressure. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. You breathe in slowly. The scent of starch and pine returns. Your hanbok is laid out. pale pink over white with a sash that must be tied precisely 3 fingers below the chest. Not for vanity, never that, but because rules are comfort. Rules are beautiful. You think of your sister who always rebelled against the powder. She once tried to walk barefoot in the rain, letting her hair curl freely, laughing, as her ribbons trailed behind her. Your mother cried for an hour afterward. Not in anger, but fear. What if someone had seen? What if someone thought she wasn't properly raised? You lower yourself to the floor, tucking your legs under, in the formal pose of a lady in waiting. It's uncomfortable, but you hold it. Grace is endurance after all. And yet, somewhere inside you imagine loosening the sash just an inch, sleeping an extra half hour, washing your face with warm water, and not caring what it leaves behind. Just once. But not today. Today you are pale and poised, a flower still closed, waiting for light that may never come. You stand. The polished brass mirror reflects your silhouette. The air holds still. Tomorrow you will do this again, and the next day, and the next. The wind shifts again, and this time it carries heat, not the thick, perfumed warmth of a chamber, or the polished stillness of a palace, but the open, breathing warmth of land. You are no longer confined by walls or wrapped in silence. You have stepped into sun, into Ethiopia, into a beauty that speaks not in whispers, but in the language of soil and spirit. You stand on a plateau where the earth itself is red, a color so vivid and alive it seems to glow beneath your bare feet. The air smells of acacia and dust, and the sound of a drum beats somewhere in the distance, steady grounding. Here you are part of something older than courts or cosmetics, something that doesn't require mirrors to be understood. A low table has been prepared not with powders and pastes, but with oil stones and ochre. A woman approaches you. She is not a maid, but a respected elder, a keeper of ritual. Her hands are lined from decades of mixing the red earth with butter and camphor. She doesn't speak, but dips her fingers into the bowl and begins to apply the mixture to your cheeks in slow, spiraling motions. This is not decoration. It's identity. In many Ethiopian highland communities, especially among the Amhara and Tigray, applying red ochre mixed with animal fat has been both a skincare ritual and a symbolic act for centuries. The mixture protected the skin from the sun, softened it against dryness, and offered a tint of life and vibrancy. But more than that, it marked your place within the world, your clan, your maturity, your readiness for marriage, or simply your embrace of tradition. You sit still as the elder hums softly, the scent of the earth mixture strangely comforting. It's gritty at first, but warm, so warm. The paste dries slightly, leaving a soft sheen on your face, not glossy, not chalky, but luminous. There are no sharp lines, no attempts to mimic youth. This beauty is about connection to ancestors, to the land, to your own skin. Then comes the needle. It's not metal, but a fine thorn from a fig branch sterilized in smoke. She dips it in a paste of soot and milk, then presses it to your temple. You breathe in. You do not flinch. These tattoos are not ornamental. They are ancestral. In some noble families, small lines or dots on the cheeks above the brow, or at the corners of the eyes marked lineage and strength. A girl of noble birth might bear a mark near her temple, passed down through 3 generations of women, each slightly varied in placement, but rooted in the same tradition. There's a story the elder tells, murmured as she works, of a young bride who once rode 2 days across the highlands, with her face wrapped not to hide, but to protect the fresh ink that marked her entrance into womanhood. When she arrived at her new home, she unveiled herself not with coyness, but with pride. Her tattoos glimmered in the morning sun, and it was said that her husband never once raised his voice to her. Her markings reminded him she came from strength. Tidbit, or perhaps legend, tells of a noblewoman in the 18th century who had her tattoo artist summoned to the imperial court in Gondar. She insisted on having her grandmother's exact design recreated on her right cheek, down to the smallest curve of the outer dot. The pattern was said to resemble a crescent moon rising from the earth, and it became a favored motif among the women of her region for decades afterward. You press your fingers gently to the fresh tattoo. It doesn't sting, not really, but it pulses with something. Not pain, presence. There are no glass mirrors here, only polished metal trays or water basins. You catch your reflection briefly and are struck by how unfamiliar and yet utterly known you seem. You are not hiding anything, not smoothing, not correcting. This face is yours, and it tells a story. Historians have long debated how these practices evolved. Some argue that facial tattoos originated as spiritual protection invocations against disease, misfortune, or unwanted suitors. Others frame them as a feminine form of cultural authorship, especially in communities where oral tradition carried more power than the written word. The face, after all, was always visible, a walking declaration of who you were and who you came from. In Ethiopian court culture, especially during the height of the Solomonic dynasty, beauty was not divorced from identity. Ornamentation carried memory. Even braided hairstyles, often elaborate and symbolic, marked not just fashion but life stage. Young girls wore narrow rows with center partings. Married women wove their hair into complex baskets across their scalp. Widows undid their braids and wore simple cloth wraps. Every strand, every line on the skin meant something. And yet not every woman followed the tradition. In the southern kingdoms, especially among the Oromo or Sidama peoples, body markings differed or were absent entirely. Beauty here was expressed in dance, in movement, in how gracefully one carried water or sang to the moon. You rise slowly from the mat, the earth beneath your palms as you steady yourself. The sun has shifted slightly, casting long shadows across the dry grass. A shallow clay bowl is handed to you inside warm shea butter, infused with myrrh and cloves. You rub it into your arms and collarbone, the scent rich and grounding. No perfume, just earth and tree. As you sit with the elder women sipping barley milk under the acacia, there is no talk of flaw correction. No one asks whether your cheekbones are high enough or your lips too wide. The only question is, have you honored your people today? Have you remembered who you are? And somehow in that still moment you have. You lean back on your hands and let the wind dry the last of the pigment on your cheeks. You do not ask what comes next. You already know. Tomorrow the sun will rise again, and with it, the old rituals will be repeated. Not because they are demanded, but because they are remembered. Your gaze softens. You are not dressed in gold nor painted in pearl, but you have never felt more adorned. The light deepens, and far away someone starts to sing. You return to where you began, not to a specific chamber or region or ritual, but to the quiet space beneath all of them. Beneath the paste and powder, the milk and soot, the pinched cheeks and the plucked brows, there is something softer, something you're only now beginning to feel clearly. Fatigue. Not the kind that makes your knees buckle or your eyes close mid-prayer, but a deeper one, a fatigue of performance. A long exhale that never quite completes. You've spent the day becoming a face, or rather building one that doesn't move too much, one that doesn't shine, one that says just enough to be pleasing and nothing more. And now, as the final pigments dry and the final oils settle, you ask yourself, where did you go? The answer doesn't come easily. It never does, because beauty for so many women across time was never a joy to be chased, but a requirement to be endured, and not just endured, performed, enforced, perfected, quietly, without complaint. Your back remembers the weight of posture training. Your lips still feel the sting of acidic tint. Your cheeks pulse faintly where the rouge once sat. You've been everywhere, from the clay powders of medieval England to the glowing pearl of Joseon, Korea, from sandalwood masks in Tamil Nadu to ochre tattoos in the Horn of Africa. And still the pattern repeats. A woman must be soft and silent and small. Her skin must speak more than she ever does. Her scent must linger, even when her voice cannot. There's a strange sadness in it all, not because beauty is inherently wrong or empty, but because it was never quite yours to define. You did not get to ask, "What do I find beautiful?" The question was asked for you, answered for you, and then quietly enforced by dowry lists, by temple murals, by court gossip, and whispered prayers. Historians still argue whether medieval beauty standards were more restrictive in Europe or Asia, whether red lips meant sin in Paris and virtue in Kyoto. They analyzed trade routes of lapis lazuli trace recipes for rose oil through pharmacy archives. Compare grooming tools recovered from tombs in Mali and marketplaces in Istanbul. But what they can't always capture is the human truth behind those tools, the longing, the pressure, the loss of softness under layers of rule. Because you know now, having lived it, even just through this gentle dream, that beauty rituals were never truly about vanity. They were about survival, about being chosen, being kept, being safe. A painted cheek could mean a higher bid for marriage. A veiled brow could signal modesty. A scented veil could spare you from suspicion. You weren't adorning yourself. You were defending yourself. And still, despite it all, there were moments of joy. In the hiss of boiling beetroot water, in the laughter shared while applying clay masks with your sisters, in the smell of fresh jasmine in the early morning oil. Even in constraint, women made space for themselves. They made art from the rules. They braided resistance into beauty. You press your palm lightly to your face, not to inspect, not to correct, but just to feel. To remind yourself there is skin beneath the powder breath, beneath the ritual life, beneath the mold. Maybe that's the quiet victory of it all. Because even now, centuries later, you're still asking questions, still wondering what it would mean to be beautiful for your own sake. Not for marriage, not for purity, not for family honor, or religious approval or public admiration, just for you. You rise, slowly. The ritual is complete. The night is deepening. Somewhere in a part of the world you haven't visited, yet another woman is tracing kohl along her eyes, or tying silk around her waist, or dipping a comb into camellia oil. She's not so different from you. She knows the expectations. But still she looks into the mirror and breathes. She's here. Maybe the point isn't to break the ritual, but to reclaim it, to take what was once obligation and soften it into choice. You reach for the lamp. The flame flickers, once small but steady. And in that hush of quiet light, you remember something every woman you became today still lives within you. The noble girl in the tower, the Persian bride weaving jasmine into her sleeves, the Ethiopian elder with red earth on her palms, the girl who whispered to her reflection, wondering if she was enough. You were always enough. And now you can rest. You close your eyes. And this time you are unpainted, unbound, untouched, and still beautiful. So here you are at the end of the story, or rather at the beginning of your rest. You've walked through centuries, through the long corridors of powdered silence and perfumed expectation, and you've emerged not broken, but softened. There is something powerful in that. You've seen the face of beauty worn like armor, worn like duty, and sometimes worn like hope. You've seen it drawn from roses and river clay, carved by heat and history. And yet in all these stories, what remains isn't the paint, it's the person underneath. You might still feel the ghost of beetroot on your lips, the press of a comb at your temple, the shimmer of pearl dust on your cheekbone. But let it all fade now. Let the rouge and ritual fall away like ash at midnight. What stays is the warmth of knowing the quiet, gentle truth that you were always more than what they asked you to become. Tonight you don't have to impress anyone. There's no court to charm, no dowry to win, no mirror to please. Only stillness, only the soft rhythm of your breath, the weight of your body against the bed, the hush of night gathering gently around you. Take a deep breath now. Let the stories settle in your bones, not like burdens, but like lullabies. Let the weight of performance melt into the mattress, leaving you just as you are, whole, unseen, and finally at peace. And as you drift, remember, beauty was never the goal. It was always the excuse. But rest is yours. Good night, lovely soul.